Okay, that mic and that mic. All right, we're a minute out.
Okay.
Okay, we are live. Is this wasn't your mug, is it? This wasn't your mug, right? Was that your mug? Was that your mug?
I'm done.
Okay.
Yep.
Just clarifying.
Thanks.
We're rolling.
Hey Chris, I apologize.
Put the rolling. You're live there.
The,
Should
pr-
be all
the
set.
yeah, start the camera. The printer's not printing, so I don't have a script for you. I'll try to fix
No
it at the
worries.
break.
We'll fix it. No worries.
Okay.
Okay, we're rolling. We're live. You got your
Okay.
headphones.
Okay.
Good.
Welcome to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to us on AM 1460 and FM 101.1. The Answer. Welcome to Tuesday, which is always our government and politics day. And,
Great.
you know, it's amazing around here. I really appreciate, sometimes I book the guests, but lately Zach, who's one of our main interns here, he books the guests. And when we book someone and then something happens in town, and it's like, this is amazing. We already had this guy coming on. And so we had already set up to talk about law enforcement here in the Springs when, as I'm sure you've heard, this big bust, I've been calling it an ICE bust, but it seems like it was more a DEA bust, but it seems like there was like 20 different law enforcement agencies involved, as often happens with something this big. Happened a nightclub, an illegal nightclub operating not in some back area out on the Front Range or in some back neighborhood. It was right there on Airport Road in South Academy. And we're getting, word even from, it became national news instantly, and even coming from Pam Bondi, that there have been, and it came out that there have been 911 calls locally, over 100 of them for the past couple of years. So it was a known property. And the law enforcement went in early Sunday morning, busted the place, found there were over 200 people there, found prostitution, drugs, weapons, MS-13, Hells Angels. There were members of Fort Carson military that were there. It's unclear what they were doing there. Were they doing security? Were they involved in it? But it was done by the feds, and the big news is that out of the people there, it seems like half or more than half were illegals. Now we've been told since, you remember, about a year ago, I think it was like February of was it February or March or something of last year, when there was this thing where these like 20 illegal immigrant families were bussed down and they were taken in by the Salvation Army. We did a show on it, and we were told that's it. We don't have illegal immigrants here. It's not a big thing here. That's up in Denver. That's up in Aurora. And a lot of what we're told is, we're like Camelot, right? Like nothing happens here. It only blizzards at night here. That we don't have these issues of these other cities. We don't have drugs. We don't have human trafficking. We don't have illegal alien problems. But big wake up call to what we already knew is that we do. And the media needs to be covering it. And we try to do that. We do as much investigative journalism as we can here, using volunteers, using citizen journalists like you. And so we'd love you to get involved in that as we tell these stories. Maybe you want to tell deep, dangerous stories, maybe more feature stories. It doesn't matter. We just want all the stories out there. So please go on the peak.news and join us as a citizen journalist or a tech or an intern or a sponsor, because this is what we need to do. Yesterday on here I said, you know what? This is a media version of Neighborhood Watch. This is how we can watch over the community and put it out there. So again, do we have this in our town? Yes, of course we do. Has the media been talking about it? No, they really don't. In fact, they could have known about these things and told these stories before they get bad. And that's what we're trying to do to improve everything. And we call everyone to do better. And we have on the program today, and again, this was set up ahead of time, which I just, love, is we have Chris Burns, retired city police and National Guard Army officer. He just ran for city council.
Yep.
Didn't win.
Came in second.
Came in second.
Got a silver medal. It was great.
And current member of the Colorado Springs Law Enforcement Transparency and Advisory Commission. And so we're going to be talking about law enforcement in the Springs and, of course, this nightclub bust and things associated with that. So, Chris Burns, welcome to the Peak.
Thanks for having me. Great day. Good to be
Great
here.
to have you here. And you also have a background in policing human trafficking and other things, too, and specifically migrant communities.
Yeah, so I sit on the board of 2 community human trafficking nonprofits where we work to end the scourge of trafficking. Also in our community, I've been what is called a cultural mentor for refugees that have come into the community through government programs. And then we teach them how to ride buses and drive cars. And
we're going to be talking about that through the
Sure.
program. So amazingly, we had this guest set up. It's almost like we knew something. And
Go figure.
So we're spending today's program talking about policing in the Springs and criminal aliens in our region.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Goldman the Watchman. You're listening to us on Government Politics Day while we unravel what we already knew is, we got some problems here in River City.
Right. There you
You're
go.
listening to The Peak, and we'll be right back.
Great.
Cool. Okay, we got a 4-minute break. We are never offline.
Right. So no worries.
But what I didn't review with you, because sorry, my scripts didn't print out. I'll go see if they printed out.
Yeah.
But one is get right on top of the mic. It's
Okay.
a very small pickup pattern because of the camera. Even if you can,
You got to
the
go
reason you put them here instead of on the corner.
straight into it.
Yeah.
Do you want me on the corner?
Well, we usually do because that gives you a better camera angle.
Okay.
But the mic has a very short pickup pattern,
But
so
right
you
in
got to
front of
be
it.
so you got to be on top of it
Okay.
to get it. Otherwise, wow, really.
Yeah.
Getting congested. That'd be nice. I got my coffee here, but
Water, sure, if I get parched during the show.
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
So great.
Because it's just a voice,
Right.
there needs to be more of a presence.
Okay.
So it'll feel a little over the top, but
Yeah.
everything you get shrunk down. Your voice gets shrunk down.
Oh my gosh, I'm
on
not
here.
that tall to start with.
Yeah.
Oh my
so
gosh.
so more of a intensity and a passionate presence.
Okay.
Because any kind of emotion or anything has to come through the voice. So we
Okay.
got to vote like radio theater.
Okay.
Poignant pauses or
Yeah.
just everything has to be vocalized.
Right.
As far as timing, this means wrap it up. So about 10 or 15 seconds.
I was going to say, is there a
land the
clock to
plane.
see, or
I have a
you're gonna-
clock, but don't worry about that. I'll run things, but
Gotcha.
so that I can take it back to ask the next question, or we have
Okay.
to go to commercial. So don't come to a screeching halt, but basically finish your thought
Okay.
and hand it back to me. During the monologue segment,
Right.
when you'll have 4 minutes, I'll give you 3,
Oh, good.
2, 1,
Yep.
and this means 30 seconds.
Okay.
So you have time to, self-edit while you're going, and then do you have some bullet points for
Sure.
what you want to say on that? Okay,
Yeah.
but you have them written.
I do. I've got
Okay.
it. Yeah.
It's just you always never want to blank on live radio, so it's always good to be able to look down and
The
see
L
what
button,
your
the
points are.
Yeah.
And when you hear music,
Yep.
that means that's my 30-second warning
Okay.
track. So at that point, if you're still talking, definitely wrap it up and hand it back to me
Okay.
there. But otherwise, good talk radio is people listening in sort of voyeuristically on
Right.
people having an interesting conversation. So now that we basically know where we want to go, it's just a matter of, having good banter and,
Right.
and doing it. People listening in of, we're having a good time. We're dealing with topics, and overall that's
Right.
why people listen to this, to talk radio, and we're filling them in on local stuff. So
Great.
So let me go see if my script's magically
Okay.
printed.
Okay.
I apologize. We usually
No worries.
Hey, James.
Thank you, sir.
I think the printer needs to be unplugged and plugged back in. Yeah, do that, and then that way at the break I can plug in my computer and try to get the script. Thank you, Zach. Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to us on AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer. And today's Government and Politics Day, and we're spending time on law enforcement and illegal alien issues that, supposedly we didn't have here, but we certainly do. And we have as our guest and co-host for the hour, retired police officer and former city council candidate and current member of the Colorado Springs Law Enforcement Transparency and Advisory Commission, Chris Burns. And this is our headlines segment. And I got something interesting for you. So, Chris, again, thanks for being on.
Hey, thanks very much for having me.
And great timing based on what happened on Sunday with this law enforcement raid of an illegal nightclub. If you didn't hear about it, I can't imagine you didn't. Down on South Academy and Airport Road. Drugs, prostitution, gangs. It's, and half the people in the place were illegal aliens. So what I thought we'd do today, since it's Government and Politics Day, is certainly the official statements came out, and thanks to the Gazette for putting them all in one article. And I found them today, and I said, you know what? Let's read some comments from local officials and have Chris, who has been a military and city police officer, sort of read between the lines for us, since he knows this stuff. And what's great is, because we've wanted to have police officials on for a long time, they say they can't really comment. Maybe they'll send a public affairs person. But since he's retired and he's on the Transparency Committee, I told him, good to have someone on who can talk freely. So Mayor Yemi Mobilati said, I was briefed ahead of today's, this was on Sunday, coordinated operation. I want to thank the DEA's Rocky Mountain Field Division and Colorado Springs Police Department and all of our local, state, and federal partners for their work to enforce the rule of law. Let me be clear. Criminal activity of any kind from anyone will not be tolerated in Colorado Springs. Remember, he is a strong mayor, and he's over the police department, Mayor Yemi. This investigation and execution of these warrants are the result of clear evidence of serious criminal conduct. Our residents deserve to live in a city that's safe, etc. And I saw him, he did an interview on Newsmax yesterday where he said he loved that there was a raid, and that he wishes there was more. Interestingly, a year ago when we were talking about sanctuary cities, he talked about how he came in as an immigrant the traditional way, which I assume that means legal. As
a documented
immigrant. And seemed to be. And so there's always this complaint of, well, we have our hands tied because of Denver and the sanctuary city policies, and yet Mayor Yemi, the city council, county commissioners all a year ago declared us not a sanctuary city. Chris, what do you make of the mayor's comments?
Well, let me first start out by saying, yes, I am retired Colorado Springs police officer, and I'm also on a city council subcommittee for law enforcement advisory. But I don't speak for the police department, and I don't speak for the city council. This is my own opinions, so I want to make that clear. And also, I had no information other than what I saw in the news about this raid.
Right.
Like I don't have some inside
But we
track.
want from your experience
Yep.
and as a private citizen.
Sure.
What do you have to say
So let me
here?
start out with the mayor. When he commented, he said this is a DEA Rocky Mountain Field Division. So that's a federal agency that partners with local law enforcement. That tells me right off that this was a much larger investigation than just a single nightclub here. That tells me there's probably a web nexus associated with this that brought law enforcement to that point. Also, he talked about today's coordinated operation. My guess would be that he did not get much of a pre-warning that this was going to happen. When investigations like this take place, operational security, keeping it secret is of paramount importance. And the feds, when they come in and they do an operation or investigation, they will partner with maybe segments of the police department. But for example, when I was a patrol officer, nothing of this magnitude had happened, but other investigations would take place with federal agencies. And it was a relatively short, if sometimes the same day, that we were notified that this was happening. So again, I really want to acknowledge and commend the DEA for what looks like an exceptionally good job, and no one was injured from anything that I read. I think I want to keep that paramount, either officers or people that they contacted in this club. So it sounds like they did a really, really good job. And then, of course, there were guns, drugs, evidence of prostitution. There were active duty service members from what we know, Army, as well as members of MS-13, an El Salvadorian gang, and TDA, Tren de Agua, which is a Venezuelan gang. And to have those two here as a nexus is another high point that shouldn't be looked over.
Okay. Comment from Colorado Springs Police Chief Vasquez. I want to be clear that it is the responsibility of the Colorado Springs Police Department to investigate criminal activity and make arrests when appropriate. This operation was the result of a months-long investigation into serious criminal activity in our community. While the investigation is ongoing, arrests for these criminal violations are expected. CSPD is aware of our federal partners, also detained multiple people for suspected immigration violations during the operation. CSPD is not authorized to conduct immigration enforcement under Colorado law, and our participation in this operation was solely to address criminal violations affecting the safety of our community. What is
correct?
We can read through that. Speak for me.
First off, I want to echo what the chief said in that the police department, particularly the Colorado Springs Police Department, does not investigate immigration violations. So as a police officer, if I did a traffic stop and the person that I contacted didn't have any American identification, they said that they were, say, example, from Mexico, they were just visiting. Hey, thanks very much. Have a nice day. Here's your ticket. But I don't do any kind of follow-up on that per se. Now, if this person had evidence of criminal involvement, drug trafficking, things like that, I investigate the criminal side of that. And then, based on my investigation, that might be fielded out to a federal side if there were a bigger nexus in it. So I'm going to guess that somewhere along the way, local agencies were making small traffic stops, small contacts that put together a picture of a criminal network that was going on. But again, a lot of people believe that the police department, the city police department, should be interdicting and stopping undocumented aliens. And we actually don't want to do that. We want to very much not deter any person, regardless of their status in the country, from contacting the police department when they need help. Quite tragically and ironically, gangs such as this, Tren de Agua, MS-13, any of the other gangs, while they commit crimes in the community, they most often victimize members of their own undocumented immigrant populations, which is a really tragic thing because many times those people won't report serious crimes. So we really want to build those strong relationships. And I do understand what the chief is trying to say. He says, we're not there for the immigration part of it. We're there for the safety of those federal officers, and we're there to investigate those statute crimes that we investigate.
Okay, and if you go to this article, and again, this is Michael Lagerwell in the, excuse me, sorry, it wasn't the Gazette, it's KRDO. I'm sorry, I attributed it wrong. It's on the KRDO website that they put together these statements. There's a formal statement from the El Paso County Commissioners, from Congressman Jeff Crank, from Governor Jared Polis, and Michael Allen, DA Michael Allen, talking about, how they have their hands tied on dealing with stuff like this because of the legislation. But as this is Government and Politics Day,
right,
I wanted to read the statement from the El Paso County Democratic Party. The El Paso County, quote, the El Paso County Democratic Party is expressly concerned about the public statements released by Mayor Yami Motollati and the El Paso County Board of Commissioners regarding the joint ICE raid in our community this weekend. City and county leadership failed their constituents by refusing to call for restraint, compassion, or due process for the very residents they represent. At a time when U.S. residents are being wrongly detained by ICE and subjected to brutal prison conditions in countries like El Salvador, it is especially shocking to see our city and county governments provide cover for rogue police forces by publicly praising them, instead of standing up for the rights and dignity of the very residents they were elected to serve, including citizens who may have voted for them. They choose silence and complicity. Residents, including U.S. citizens, are at real risk of wrongful detention, deportation, and imprisonment or worse. Their failure to act demands condemnation. We stand in solidarity with local and state immigration rights groups and have called attention to these abuses and who continue to fight for human dignity, constitutional rights, and true public safety for all members of the community. The El Paso County Democratic Party is currently engaged in consultations to determine how we can best support ongoing legal efforts to defend due process and protect the rights and safety of our residents. Chris is shaking his head. I think you can read between the lines of this. No praise of law enforcement, condemnation of law enforcement, outright false statements that U.S. citizens are being deported, and all kinds of other things.
Right.
Democratic Party, I would just say, if you want us to take you seriously, get on board when things are maybe correct. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. We'll be right back.
Right. Yeah. How do I not use profane language when I give my feelings on that one? So, yeah.
Did you read that today Axios came out that they did a poll first month after the Trump was inaugurated that most Americans believe that Trump is a dictator. Most.
I was going to say, qualify that, and tell me what you mean by dictator.
Yeah, right. And who did you actually interview?
Yeah, I've never gotten a poll call. Go figure.
Hi, Jill, Dwayne has been in touch with me and is moving things forward with the counselors. Period. I'm on break on my radio show right now. And I reach out to you later, please, to fill you in. Question mark. Thanks. Exclamation point. Okay. So we're back in about 2 minutes. You have your notes ready for number 4.
Do we run? What do we run into now?
This is the monologue
for 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah, you'll have about 4 minutes. I'll give you the time cues.
Right. Well, gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So just keep the energy up. If you come up short, I'll ask a follow up. But try to fill the space.
I gotcha. Right.
And you'll see once you get the 3-minute cue and the 2-minute cue, you'll start seeing how much you can cover.
Yep.
And then make decisions to self edit.
Right.
In there, depending on. Okay, show's going well.
Great.
This is great because we're able, especially because I did the voter guide for the past 4 years. I know so many people who are now elected officials and everything through the guide. So when it comes to the news show and contacts and having a trust relationship to bring people in, because obviously people are wary of news. So we ask tough questions, but no gotchas, and we're because they're
fine with that.
Because we're neighbors. Like we don't, people think, why didn't you go? It's like because this person lives here, and I'm not here to ruin their life.
We might want to have them back sometime.
Yeah, and we can get more done with a long-term relationship than burning some. But it's what I've realized in regathering, like what is journalism, what is media, is so many of the problems that we have when you bring it back, lesser magistrate, when you bring it back to the local level. I don't know if you're lying to me about something that happened across the country, but if you don't report properly from that school board meeting that I was at, I'm going to get to know that you're lying or you're withholding information or whatever, and you're lying to your neighbors and you live here and
hold them down.
We all want that. So the hyper local aspects
Yeah.
like cleans up things automatically. And I also believe we're another form of law enforcement,
Yeah.
you know, but we get to keep it confident. It can't be used against you because we have shield laws.
Okay.
So we're actually this companion if we did our jobs.
Right. Very good.
Okay, here we go. Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman, and we've been lied to, obviously, by local media, by political people, whatever, that we don't have problems here that we obviously do. When an illegal nightclub gets busted and half the people are illegal aliens, we have to admit but of course those were the only ones, right? Like those 100 and some, they're all gone now. We have none of them here. They're all up in Aurora. No, I mean, you got to figure I don't think they were all in one nightclub.
Right.
That would have been an amazing sting operation. But we have with us here Chris Burns, retired police and National Guard Army officer, and also currently sits on the Colorado Springs Law Enforcement Transparency and Advisory Commission and works on different boards also for human trafficking. And it just so happened we had him booked on the show before this happened. And so we're talking about law enforcement here. And in this segment, Chris is going to talk about, because he's worked with immigrant communities, are all aliens the same? Chris Burns.
No, as a matter of fact, one of the big misnomers you hear tossed around a lot of times is illegal alien. What does that mean? What does that really mean? Well, believe it or not, that is a bit of a challenged term. And at one point, there was no legal definition of that term illegal alien. People use it pretty frequently to just describe someone who's not from this country. Well, there's actually three categories of people that will come into our country. Okay. So the first one is what's called a documented alien. This is a person who has been either prior to arriving in the country or at a point of entry, documents themselves. They come into our country. And there are a myriad of different categories. You hear things like refugee, asylee, human trafficking victim visas, educational visas, student visas. All of these things are different categories for what's called a documented alien. The other category is what's called an undocumented alien. And that's a lot like what you hear. Oh, a person came up, say, through our southern border and didn't stop at a point of entry. They came through the border. They're now undocumented in our country. We have a fair number of people in our community that are in that status, keeping in mind local police departments don't enforce against that. That's still a federal crime. But with that, that becomes a situation for the feds to deal with, for the federal agencies to deal with. Believe it or not, being in an undocumented status with no documentation, if you're contacted in the interior, can be a statute offense, may not be a criminal offense. Other than that, coming in as an undocumented person is a federal misdemeanor. It's called 8 U.S.C. Code 1325, and you can be charged for that. Our country didn't, over the last 4 years, charge a lot of people with that because of the volume. It causes a lot of people to, a lot of casework to do that. If then you're deported or you're removed from the country and you come back in the country, now you've actually had a statute offense against you, you can become what is called the third category, a criminal alien. Also with that are people in our country, whether in a documented or undocumented status, who then become involved in crimes, whether it's serious crimes, murder, drug running, gun offenses, domestic violence. Those are things that can change your status to a criminal alien. And those are people who we should prioritize for removal. And that's what the ICE agencies, Immigration Customs Enforcement in the interior, focuses on and brings them back. The one other thing I wanted to look at is under the documented alien, you hear this refugee status. People come to our country as a refugee. That's a very specific definition and a very specific process. These people start outside of our country, and they then contact our country. They may be in a refugee camp. They contact our country. They get vetted, and they're brought here as a bona fide refugee. People that do that are fleeing things like war, persecution, religious persecution, any one of a number of things. But that, for a person to show up here and say, I want to be a refugee, two things that don't count. Criminal activity in your country where you're coming from. If you said the crime's too bad, I want to come to the United States, or economic opportunity. Hey, I want a better job. I want more money. Those automatically disqualify you from being in a refugee status. So with that, I just want people to understand there are three very distinct categories: documented alien, undocumented alien, and criminal alien. And the people that were contacted in this may fall into any one of a number of categories. So just to blanket them all as illegal alien, we don't know at this point.
So saying those 100 plus that they're saying that were detained at the nightclub, they could be in any of those status.
Correct.
Okay, so they could be documented. They could be here legally.
It could be a student on a student visa at a university that
Okay.
was at the party, and they're in a documented status but committing criminal acts.
Isn't this interesting when we actually get information from a good source?
There you go. So,
I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. We're talking about the DEA ICE raid and aliens in our community on the Peak, and we'll be right back. Okay, excellent.
good.
So this is just 2 minutes,
Okay.
and now we're into. So again, sorry you don't have a script, but
No worries.
again, first is how long have you been in law enforcement?
Yep.
And so this is where you get your backstory.
Yep.
Second is anyone who thought we didn't have issues in the Springs had a wake up call on Sunday night's raid. What else are we? Do we have significant crime issues in this town? Where are we at?
Of a little sleepy town of
Yeah.
500,000.
Right. Third is what can we do as a community to clean up our own town and not necessarily have to have the feds, come in for these things. And then fourthly, we're going to talk about the community boards you sit on
Yeah.
and getting involved with the community.
Great.
Okay. So again, they'll have about 2.5 minutes per. I'll just
Okay.
get into the rhythm of things. But if you see this,
Gotcha.
10 or 15 seconds, wrap it up and
Gotcha.
hand it back to me. So
Great.
cool.
And if you want to go into the military side of these military people that were contacted, we can do that also. Up to you, or not.
Yeah, I think it just because we're staying in with I mean, I don't know. I don't know that we have the time
Okay.
to
No worries.
do that. Yeah. I mean, unless you don't want to do
Oh no.
human
I'll
trafficking.
follow.
No. In the last segment, would you want to do human trafficking or you want to go into the military stuff?
I'll leave it up to you. However that works.
Well, I think you probably know more about the human
Yeah, let's do
trafficking
that.
because the military thing was sudden and we really don't even know
Right.
yet. I mean, these guys may have, we're back. They may have been, hired as security and not known. Although I heard there were drugs in the or firearms in the club. So if there's
Yeah.
security at the door, why are there firearms in a?
Good question.
I mean, they would not want firearms in there.
Right.
Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to us on AM 1460 and FM 101.1 The Answer. And we're talking about law enforcement in Colorado Springs on the heels of this DEA, ICE, multiple law enforcement agency bust of an illegal nightclub that happened on early Sunday morning. Signs of prostitution, drugs, firearms, and a lot of aliens there that we don't know. Are they illegal? Are they criminal? But half the people in the club seemingly under that status, which would seem to indicate that we do have a problem here in River City. That this is not what we necessarily think it is. Here of some sleepy little backwater town that maybe Colorado Springs was 20 or 30 years ago.
Right.
And I've said this on the program quite a bit because really the front lines isn't law enforcement. It's the media. If the media is telling stories, whether it's political, what's going on in our board meetings or whatever, what's going on the streets at the neighborhood level. And so we would love you to get involved because unlike any other news organization in town, we're actually citizen journalists and interns. And so you can go to thepeak.news, find out more about us and what we're doing here and join us. And we're really, really excited that in District 11 school district, I and other colleagues of mine that are active media people are going to start instructing young people, 11th and 12th graders, in broadcast journalism, media ethics, and tying them into an internship here at the Peak so they can get real vocational training. And that's going to be starting in August. But the enrollment for that is going on right now. So if you have a student, you are a student or you know of a student, you're a parent. It doesn't have to be D11 because of the way Colorado works. It could be any school district. It can be private. It can be homeschool. we'd love to have homeschoolers in, is go to our website, thepeak.news, go to the D11 CTE link, check it out, all the information, but register and get your student involved. And I'll tell you, we have James, who's one of our interns. He's on the board right now running the show, does it a couple of days a week because he got hired by Salem after interning for 6 months.
Nice.
This is a real deal internship, and I'm excited to be part of it. But now's the time to enroll your students. So again, go to thepeak.news and check that out, and we'll see you there. And we'll have young people learning to be journalists, not activists, not influencers, but actually journalists. Wouldn't that be refreshing to get trust back in the media by using our young people?
Nice.
So we have as our guest and co-host on the program today, Chris Burns, retired police officer and Army National Guard officer, ran for city council in the last election for city council, member of the Colorado Springs Law Enforcement Transparency and Advisory Commission. And so, Chris, fill us in more about your background, and it seems like a whole career in different types of law enforcement.
Yeah. So I will speak first to the human trafficking side of that. So early in my career, I was encountering people, women primarily, that were, as we would say, prostitutes out on Platte Avenue, South Nevada. And
How long ago was this?
Oh, we're probably talking late 90s, early 2000s. Okay. And I realized pretty quick that many of them, most, in fact, all of them, were not really there because this is their chosen profession. Usually it revolved around a cycle of domestic violence with a significant other. They were there to challengingly try to support a drug habit, alcohol. And really what has now, we've realized, become a situation where these were women that were victims of human trafficking. They're not in control. They're forced to do prostitution. And by signing a ticket and just walking away,
so you're saying
really
it's devolved from that to something that's much more organized.
Well, there's always been the organized element,
okay,
but there's also been the unorganized element of it also. But it really let me as a police officer see, hey, we're not doing the service here that we need to do, which led me to the Southern Colorado Human Trafficking Task Force, which was a nonprofit, a group of community involved people that were very interested in ending human trafficking, both in the sex trafficking as well as labor trafficking. So with that, I began to learn the details and the intricacies of that horrendous crime. And what I came to realize is that it's very prevalent in a lot of areas. You know, we think first most about that person on the street who's having to sell their body, but also that leads into everything from a person working in a restaurant not being paid, or as we're looking at here, an undocumented alien who's trying to survive, who works for someone who's paid under the table, and they have no recourse if they're not paid, or they're paid a measly wage. So those are all things and forms of victimization through trafficking. And those are things that I realized that I had a heart for. So I advise both this community group, both as a police officer, and gain education in the dynamics of that specific crime set. And what we see is the same thing happening here in this club setting. So they talked about prostitution was happening. With this gang involvement, I can absolutely guarantee you that when a patron went in and wanted prostitution services, they were paying money to a gang member, not to the woman. And I can guarantee you that that woman, in all likelihood, was absolutely not there by choice. So that person could have been a victim of a trafficking crime as an undocumented person. And hopefully they do that in that immigration inspection that finds that person may be warranted of a protection visa to allow them to share in a prosecution while they're here.
So let's make a more complete wake-up call than the one that we all got on Sunday morning when we heard this news. We all suspected this thing. It's a city approaching 500,000. Sure. It's a county approaching 1 million. These things happen. We talk about the I-25 corridor and things are running up and down, but there's been this, sort of facade that, they don't stop here. We don't have it here. And I would think that hopefully overall the problem is not institutionalized like 400 years in New York or Chicago, that it's still something small enough for us to deal with here and to hopefully solve. At least I'm optimistic that way. The thing is because we are a tourist town, again, 500,000 people, but 2 million tourists, I think that these stories are kept out of the headlines for short-term thinking. But if we don't deal with them, then this becomes a town, and not just on the crime side, but on everything,
right?
That we don't want to live here. And so it's so important, and that's what we're committed to do here as media, but I've come to learn in trying to do my job here that media is a form of law enforcement, but everything that you everything that you say can and will be kept confidential according to shield laws. So people will actually talk to us
Right.
who won't talk to police officers, and
Fair
we can be
enough.
very much part of,
Yeah.
of helping clean up. But as a police officer for all these
Right.
years, wake us up a little bit to, you know, that we're not the sleepy little no crime area that we try to pretend.
Right. So here's a public service announcement. We are now a city of 500,000.
Spoiler alert.
And
folks.
we have big city crime in our city of all natures, whether that's drugs, whether that's human trafficking, whether that's theft rings, or quite unfortunately, violent crime, which has gone up, which is a real tragedy.
And of course, we're car theft. We're one of the number one states in the country.
We
right?
are,
Yeah.
and that's a direct result of what has come out of our legislature to reduce the penalty for car theft. And it is absolutely an economic choice by people that are crime involved in our community. Hey, what's the easiest crime to do with the least possibility of getting caught? And if I get caught, what's the least penalty I'll get? And if it's low, you will incentivize that crime, as we have seen directly, without a doubt. So for the average citizen, listen, you got to get involved. You have to be eyes out. You have to be proactive. Unfortunately, our line level police officers are doing stellar work, but they are as overworked and more overworked than most cities in the country. We have some of the lowest officer to citizen ratios of any metropolitan area. So when they get in service from the point they say go, they are running call to call to call. And their ability to follow up is limited too. So whatever you can do to advocate with your public officials to increase the number of police officers that we have in this city.
Yeah, I mean, I remember because years ago I was part of Neighborhood Watch, and
Yep.
in the area that I was in, and I was told that, you know, at night in Colorado Springs, there's like 10 cruisers or 20. It
It
was
is-
some of it. No, it wasn't that low. I think it was 40.
Oh,
It was 40 for the.
that would be a big night. That'd be a
I
lot.
mean, think about
Yeah.
that, folks, and think how, and it's you know, this is a large space. Colorado Springs takes a long time to drive across.
Right.
So what, you know, that many, it's obviously understaffed. So
Yeah.
what can we do? What
Right.
can the average citizen do? Or what can we do better as a community to clean up our own town so we don't need to be on the national news? I mean, this was not
Right.
good for the Chamber of Commerce. This was
Sure.
not good for Space Force being here. You know, I mean, it's good that it's being, you know, cleaned up and people are praising that after the
Yeah.
fact. But can we clean up our own town?
Yeah, I would say certainly. Now, first off, I want to discourage anybody from actually intervening in a crime in progress. That's a very, very dangerous thing to occur. Be a good witness. Be there. Be aware. Report that. The other thing we can do is be a tough victim. All right, lock your doors, lock your car doors.
Hard target. Yeah.
Hard target. Don't store your guns in your cars. Please don't do that. So many guns enter our community through our car thefts and car break-ins. But really, between that advocate for better law enforcement, please do that. Let your elected officials know what you want. Again, the police themselves are trying their very best from the line level officer up through the chief to give you good police services, but they're only going to give you the services that the resources allow them to do. And then watch your neighborhoods. Know your neighbor. Know who comes and goes. Sometimes it's as little as looking out your window, waving at that car that drives past, and that car might have been someone looking to do something illegal, and they go, oh no, somebody's watching this neighborhood, we're going somewhere else. That can be as little as all it takes. But on the big picture, be involved, be a hard target, and be proactive. If you see something happen, report it. Even if it may not be able to be investigated right at that point, it's valuable.
You know, this is Neighborhood Watch. It's neighborhoods. It's the way things used to be.
Right.
You know, in America, watching out. Unfortunately, we're inside. With the doors closed and on our phones and things like that.
Yep.
We have about a minute left. Talk about the
Sure.
boards that people can join.
Yeah. So first off,
Oh, I'm sorry.
oh,
Oh, you
less
know what?
than a
We
minute.
need to do this in the next segment. I had my clock wrong.
Got
We're
it,
here.
no worries.
We're here with Chris Burns. Just this board that you're on coloradosprings.gov /LETAC,
Right.
which is this law enforcement council. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the boards and specifically human trafficking and fighting that in our area. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman, and we'll be right back. I forgot to punch the clock, and I zeroed it a minute in and then forgot
No worries.
that I was a minute short. So I apologize for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to have, I need they got to tell me about the rant.
Okay.
Well, what about the rant?
Only political thing I had was he was talking about the Second Amendment.
Oh, okay. But what's in what direction?
Whatever the SB.
Okay, so bills against that are taking away our 2A rights?
Yep.
Okay. And how long is it?
Hold 225.
Okay, so perfect. Okay, thanks, James. Okay. So on this one, I have to throw to a pre-record.
Sure.
So, and I have to say goodbye to you during
Oh,
this. So that
not a problem.
when I do the wrap up, because there won't be music or anything because
Okay.
it's mid segment. So when I do the wrap up, it needs to be pretty
Gotcha.
quick, like
Okay.
10 seconds. And then I'll thank you and
Sure.
give out the website again. So, okay. So let's spend about a minute talking about the boards and
Okay.
bring up the human trafficking one last. And then
Okay.
that'll be a natural segue into overall talking about human trafficking.
Okay.
And this task force.
Yep.
Okay. And does the task force do we want to give out that website?
Yes.
Or?
Sure. Or you could just ask people to Google Southern Colorado Human Trafficking Task
Okay.
Force.
Okay. And then also that other website.
Yeah, you can probably, if you're on the line, you can pull that up.
No, it's cool. Just people should just do that task force. Okay. So I'll be back at 15. So we got 2 minutes.
Okay.
Cool. This has been a good program.
Good. Hope
Yeah.
hope was what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Just didn't get to your final question there. Okay. Okay, great. I got that. Oh my God. I'm used to having a paper script in front of me, so it's a little different.
This is a very nice setup. This
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah, it's nice in here. It didn't used to be, when they decided to add video, I mean, that's my camera, but we can do a full 3-camera
Oh, nice.
switch shoot. So we have some people that do radio shows and they also want a professional podcast.
Right.
On the other side of there, he has those for switching and putting titles and
Okay.
everything. So when they did that, then they needed to dress up the
Gotcha.
Welcome back to the Peak
Great.
News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to us on Government and Politics Tuesday, and we've been spending the hour talking about local law enforcement with retired police officer, National Guard and Army officer Chris Burns, who also sits on the Colorado Springs Law Enforcement Transparency and Advisory Commission. And when we were
Yes.
finishing last segment, I mistimed it, and I wanted you to talk about the couple of boards that you sit on
Right.
that other citizens can join too.
Sure. Well, first off, I encourage any citizen to come and visit any one of the council meetings, whether the
City
council,
council.
or city council or their subcommittees. So I sit on the Law Enforcement Advisory Transparency Committee. They meet once a month. It's open to the public. You can bring subjects up, but our goal is to look at things like budget and policies and things like that that we can recommend then to city council that hopefully can improve our police department. So with that, I also am on a number of nonprofit boards. One of them is that I want to bring forward the Southern Colorado Human Trafficking Task Force. You can just Google that. We have monthly meetings. We have functions, everything from education. We also do proponency where we challenge our legislatures to improve laws around human trafficking so that people that perpetrate that crime can be held accountable. And it again is one of the things that I had to educate myself on. And as I see this report from this nightclub that was hit, I go, "Yep, there's human trafficking there. Probably the worst kind of it."
So human trafficking, we said obviously we're on a straight line up from the border, which had been open for the
Yep.
past 4 years. There's up and down the I-25 corridor. And when we think about human trafficking, the one that gets the most attention is sex trafficking, especially children.
Yes.
But there's also lots of different forms of slavery, which is really
Sure.
what it is. It's modern day slavery. So talk to us about the reality of what's going on here
Right.
with human trafficking, including child sex trafficking in our town. And sorry folks, if you have children in the car, I don't know if it's going to get a little graphic, but we need to deal with the fact that it is here or we won't solve it.
Well, it's everywhere. So it's not specific to Colorado Springs. Here's the message I would give about child sex trafficking. Most parents worry about that panel van driving around the neighborhood snatching kids, and that is largely a myth. Quite tragically, most child sex trafficking is a familial nexus. Someone in the family has gained the trust, has access to the child, and then commits that crime. When it comes to other forms of trafficking, we're talk about labor trafficking. Just like I said, that person in an undocumented status who is not paid fairly for work done, that then falls into a category that they can't tell anyone what's going on. Also associated with that is probably what happens with a lot of our undocumented immigrants called debt bondage. First off, nobody comes through our southern border without having cartel contact. They will pay what is called a coyote, or they will pay someone to bring them forward. And if they don't have that money in hand, they will land in the United States in some city with a debt on their head that the cartel has a vested interest in having them not pay off. So they fall into what's called a debt bondage situation under threat of serious injury or harm. So these are all very insidious forms of personal crimes that occur all over our country. It also occurs in Colorado Springs. And if you see something that you think is unusual in that, please report it. You can call the hotline, which is a national hotline for human trafficking. Just Google that. You can get the number. Or you can report it to the police department. Again, can be challenging. It's a very difficult crime to investigate and a very labor-intensive crime to investigate. But still, you should report.
I mean, can we fix this? Can we lessen it in the community? Do we have enough police force here and others to do it?
Yeah. So answer that question is we do not have enough police force to do it. We have a insufficient number of officers right now. Part of that is the political push and will to have more police officers. And I would absolutely tell young people, or any people for that matter, who have an interest in law enforcement, if you think at some point you might want to be a police officer, I say go do it. Was the best career I could have imagined, and really rewarding career.
Okay. Chris Burns,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much for being on the Peak. It's been a pleasure as we've been, it's good to get other perspectives, isn't it? Not everything is a conspiracy. Not everything is political. Sometimes things are just the reality of being human beings, being in a community together. So, Chris, thanks so much for being on.
Boy, thank you.
And please Google Southern Colorado Human Trafficking Task Force for more information, or the LETAC at the coloradosprings.gov. And now, Jim Miller, who ran against Chris, and they both lost
There we go.
for city council
Second. I got
and the Peak
second.
grants,
There you
talking
go.
about the Second Amendment and policies against it in the state.
off?
Yeah. Well, we're at
Still on
commercial.
camera.
What?
Are we
it's
going
still
back on?
camera. I just do a close.
You do a
I
close.
do a quick 2-minute
Gotcha.
close, and then we'll be done.
All right, no worries.
So is that valid stuff he said? Is
No.
that no? Okay.
I'll let it just sit.
Okay.
Right. Oh, I've been lobbying for that also. Wrong side of the equation. Working
Okay.
on the legal gun owner. They don't do anything about the illegal, like
Mhm.
increasing sentencing, increasing penalties. That has an immediate effect on the person's decision to arm themselves with a gun.
Okay.
Huge. Saw that early in my career. If you ever remember Project Exile, the message was if you're in possession of a gun, you get 5 years in a penitentiary. And it impacted a lot of people. They knew not to carry a gun. So yeah, they made a big difference. So somewhere we got away from actually holding people accountable for crimes.
Mhm.
So go figure.
Well, they're victims.
Right. And where any gun owner needs to be infringed upon,
Right.
which is sad. Yeah. Does this go right out to podcast or do you work it?
Generally on Fridays we put the podcast
Gotcha.
up. We have the live stream
Yes.
immediate,
Right.
but James actually edits the podcast and then we post them on Fridays and ready
Gotcha.
for the week.
That's great.
So at some point we'll be quicker where this is more
No,
getting
I mean, just to
getting
have
more
this-
interns.
Yeah.
We also, we want to edit the videos into shorts and things like that,
Okay.
but we're trying to get more interns to do that. So part of this,
Yeah.
a part of this is, especially if we have a lot of people in it, they're interns, so they're going to be
Yeah.
involved in, helping us do all these things that we just never get around to.
Right. No, that's
and
great.
doing the daily show, and
I
hopefully,
think I've
think-
got a couple of radio shows. I wish they had a way to go back and listen to stuff. And no, that's great. That's
well, pretty
huge.
much everybody's on podcast now.
Yeah.
Goes to podcasts, but with us, we just have to do things because like that music you hear, we have a license because we're at the radio
right.
station, but we don't have it for a podcast.
Ah,
So it complicates things. They said maybe don't do the copyrighted music. I said it's just too good. It sets the tone too
Right.
well.
right.
The broadcast is primary, so there's things that we have to do
Yeah.
that we can't just take the air feed and put it on.
Right.
Plus, we don't have as many commercials because people don't
Sure.
tolerate commercials as much in a podcast.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for the peak. What do you think? Do you have a better understanding of law enforcement? Do you want to get involved in what's going on? I hope so, because we do need to clean up our own city. Now, tomorrow, we're going to be doing a remote production. I'm actually going to be going up to Denver. I know it's not the Pikes Peak region, but there's a couple things happening up there tomorrow. And so we're going up, and we're actually going to be broadcasting the show remotely from the Denver Capitol. Well, what's going on? Well, Jordan Baldwin, our lead investigative journalist here, is also involved in, he did this last year, a Israel Independence Day rally up on the Capitol steps. And he's invited me again to speak, as I'm a dual American and Israeli citizen, and I'm going up there and doing that. And we would love your support to come up. It's from noon to 4 up there. I forget which side of the building it's on, but you'll find us up there. And so we're going to be up there. So come on up, because it's become, people are intimidated for coming for these things because the Hamas people and all of that. So come and show your support. We've even heard that Governor Polis might actually come out and attend that. Also, on the other side of the Capitol, there's what's being called the Rally for Sanity against this 1312 transgender bill. So we figured there's going to be a lot of people up there. Really interesting topic. Going to be a beautiful day. So join us for Faith and Family Wednesday tomorrow, as we'll be broadcasting live from around the Capitol in Denver. Stay tuned now for the Larry Elder Show coming up on The Answer, and check out our 200 plus podcasts on the peak.news. And of course, as I mentioned before, this broadcast journalism course that we're going to be teaching in D11, taking registrations now. Go to our website, thepeak.news, and the D11 CTE link. Show it to students. Let's get a whole team of citizen journalists covering the region, especially young people. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. Thanks for joining us for such a time as this. Shalom.
Very well done. Thank you, sir.
That's the peak.
That's great. That is great.